Okay, so welcome. It gives us great pleasure to welcome you to our next workshop in our personal and professional wellness series. I'm Dr. Ian Kaminsky from the Melbourne NLP Hypnosis Centre, and I'm joined here today by Suzanne Dipros from Performance Advantage HR. Our goal with our workshop series is to give you lots of great tips, ideas and resources to help you better improve your health and well-being, not only personally but also in the workplace. Our topic today is supporting mental wellness in the workplace. We're going to be focusing on these particular topics. What is well-being? Well-being benefits, balanced life, impacts at work, support strategies and resources. If you have any questions, just place them beneath this video and we'll answer those as soon as possible. So without further ado, let me introduce Suzanne Dipros from Performance Advantage HR. Hello, Suzanne. How are you today?
Hi, Ian. I'm very well and very glad to be here and providing this workshop for everybody today. So, we'll be taking you through quite a few different elements of well-being, as Ian has outlined, but our focus today really is about well-being and its impact and strategies for improving well-being in the workplace. So what we're going to be doing is unpacking what we can do in the workplace, what you can do for yourself, what supervisors can do, quite a bit of information. We're going to start off first of all with just, what is well-being? And really well-being, when you are in a situation of positive, good well-being, you are actually thriving. You're able to maintain good relationships, develop and maintain, I should say. You're using your strengths, so that's a good thing, because then you're actually, I suppose, in your own slipstream, and you'll feel good about yourself with those things, instead of trying to claw up a mountain or something else like that. You'll be in a place of being able to really contribute to perhaps your family, to work groups, to the community on a wider field. And you will have lots of scenarios that actually bring you pleasure in life. And I suppose that really brings up this whole concept of you'll feel in the flow, and it's a bit of a airy, fairy sort of concept, flow. But when you're in the flow, as I mentioned maybe before, like the tide, slipstream or whatever else, you really can feel you're in the right place doing the right things.
In the zone almost, they say.
Yes. So it's a very positive, nurturing circumstance where you're able to give and be given back to too, I would say. The opportunity to give actually and contribute can actually feed you back again. So, yes.
And would you say, Suzanne, that if you're feeling really good, then others will, feed off that and feel good as well?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of the almost one-to-one ways you can contribute to people.
Fantastic. So next slide.
Yes, please. So well-being, what are the actual benefits of well-being? Obviously, it's a really positive place to be, and wouldn't we all like to live like that every day? But the big thing, I think, with well-being is that you actually build up a really good sense of resilience, really, in your life. And resilience is really important because we all have things that happen to us. We have maybe busy lives, we have things that don't work out. We have tensions, stress, certain levels of anxiety or worry about things, particularly now, if you like. But if you have a really strong sense of well-being, it gives you a really good platform for resilience towards some of those, hurdles, potholes, slaps in the face, whatever you want to call them, that will come your way, because they come to everybody's life, So, yeah.
I'm going to say it, I've certainly noticed myself, Suzanne, that when I'm in a really great place, feeling really good, I can deal with challenges a lot easier.
Yes,
Do you find the same?
Yeah, absolutely. So instead of thinking it's a mountain, you just realize, okay, there's something that's got to happen here. You've got to move forward somehow, but it's not seen as insurmountable. And and whilst you might have to just take a moment or two and think, right, how am I going to meet this challenge? You're not really doubting yourself. You're just thinking, I'm going to meet this challenge. So it really gives you some protection for when times get tough. And times do get tough for all of us, at
Mm.
different times.
It's
But
inevitable in life. You'll have difficult times, isn't it, Suzanne?
absolutely, so sad, but so true. So and in fact, I think it serves us well because being maybe on the more mature side at the moment and realizing what we're dealing with out in the wider world, you realize, yes, okay, whilst we mightn't have seen things quite like this, we have seen other challenges, and our feet are still on the ground, and we are still living, we're still breathing, we're still, so you can actually have some sort of level of self-confidence from that. And I think that then feeds into your resilience again. So it's a very connected sort of concept, if you like. So, yeah.
And again, would you say the more resilient you are, the more you can actually help others to be resilient as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah. You can't really operate and help people when you're in a weakened state yourself. So in terms of taking care of people, or maybe, if you're a supervisor or a team leader or a manager or whatever else in the workplace, self-care is a very good basis for being able to, go back to work on Monday and deal with the coming week again, So, self-care and your own personal state of mind and well-being will feed directly into your capacities to be able to manage effectively at work. Like you said, Ian, before, it impacts on your views, and and I think it energizes you to actually focus positively too,
Awesome.
and not overlook some things, I think. Yeah.
Next slide.
Yes, thank you. That's great. So well-being is not just one sort of concept. There's a whole lot to the well-being concept. You'll see here the physical side, going around to intellectual, emotional, occupation, everything, spiritual, social, all fits in together. So in order to have wellness, we really need to identify these different elements of life. I don't think it identifies here financial, and that sometimes has an impact as well, and that's probably one of the biggest worries a lot of people might have at the moment. But these are all elements that's quite interesting, because you can actually control a lot of these things. Maybe not occupational quite right now, or maybe you might have been put off work, who knows, or maybe you're one of the other side, and super busy at this time. But if you look at this in a balanced life, you can pursue intellectual pursuits and learning. You can pursue social activities. You can work on the spiritual elements of your life, or the physical side, fitness, etc., and even the emotional side, unpacking and looking at what is happening in your life emotionally. So these are all connected. And quite often, if one goes down, well, the others go down too. It's sort of, it's and I suppose we'll go on to the next slide, Ian. It's an interactive process, and so you do need to sort of think about, becoming aware of those different elements in your life, and addressing those different elements in your life. And, maybe just having a touch point. How are you going intellectually? Are you, stale? Do you need some new ideas? And that could be for work, or it could just be, I don't know, philosophy or anything else like that for yourself. Are you practicing healthy choices? And, healthy choices might be, going to bed on time. Things that you can control. There is a huge amount in your life that you actually can control yourself, and put in place healthy choices. Obvious ones would be food, types of food, how much food. It could be alcohol. It could be other elements like that. And who's in control. So really looking at making choices about what happens in your life, and looking at, I suppose these are all strategies then towards a successful and a balanced life. It doesn't necessarily just happen incidentally. You might have to look at those elements of wellness and think about where are you letting yourself down perhaps, or where you can actually support your improved wellness. Yeah, it's like a glass of water. You can sort of add things to it.
It's also taking responsibility for that too, isn't it, Suzanne?
Oh, absolutely, yes, which is sometimes not easy. Sometimes you might want to point fingers or sort of think, oh, something happened to me. And I mean, sometimes things do happen to you, and sometimes they can be really unfair or nasty or whatever else like that. And maybe sometimes they might throw you off kilter, but I think, you get back onto that horse and you get back onto your positive life a lot sooner if you have all the elements of wellness going for you. So it's actually, I suppose, the big part of this is that it can be quite deliberate. It's actually a program you can put into place. You may not have grown up with understanding all of it, but you can put it in place. You can learn and put it in place. You can make changes. So
it's also a little bit about controlling the controllables, isn't it?
Yes, which is one of your lovely concepts, really, I think, Ian. Looking at what goes in the bucket of things that you can control, and then putting aside maybe some of those that you can't control. I think it's very satisfying to look at what you can control and make some progress on those things. And I'm a firm believer also too in looking at what your strengths are and using those, and maybe just leaving some of those other elements. Why focus on them? They're going to bring you down. Look at your strengths, look at what you can control, build those up, and often that it almost like overflows into other elements of your life.
Next slide.
Yes, please. So right now we know we are really dealing with some uncertainties for lots of people. Uncertainties for quite a while that we're probably going to be facing. But you know what? This has actually been the case for I don't know how long. Maybe at the moment it's just accelerated, and we have quite a discontinuity. People are talking about before and after and those sorts of things. But again, you will continue to breathe. You will continue to have a life. You will, you will prevail if you actually put some wellbeing strategies into place, and also take a proactive approach. I think, no matter that it might, throw you a few curveballs. And
we just want to alert our viewers, in fact, that we've actually got another workshop in our series, haven't we? Where we actually covered, dealing with uncertainty and stress and anxiety, haven't we, Suzanne? People actually might want to have a look at that, to maybe get some more information.
Yeah. And it's an interesting thing because I think, I don't know about you, Ian, but certainly about me, you might know these things, but it doesn't mean you're immune to stress and anxiety, and it doesn't mean you don't have to go back and have a look at things, and review and recalibrate sometimes, but if you actually do a bit of self-awareness training and review of yourself, you can see some of the symptoms and then maybe realise, hang on here, this isn't working for me. I need to take a step back and go in another direction, or add to my your skill base or your knowledge or what you are doing to deal with some of the anxiety and the changes, etc., that are happening. We're not always, even if we are confident, we're not always confident all the time and about everything. So
And often often what we know and what we do are two different things, aren't they, Suzanne?
They are, yes, they are. So yes, yeah. And actually, it's interesting. What you're really talking about there is probably sometimes feelings and their potential to maybe dominate in times where you are feeling vulnerable. And we all have those times of feeling vulnerable. But then really understanding this is a feeling, and maybe the feeling needs to be tested. Is it actually right or wrong? So, yeah. But, right now and this is a bit hard because right now with the self-isolation that's happening, how do you just, validate what you're thinking, and it's easy to fall inwards perhaps and then go around a bit too quickly in a bit of a vortex, really. So, and that is a natural human response, to hunker down, I think, in some of these times. But I think we need to really be aware of when it works for us and when it doesn't.
What's really interesting though, Suzanne, is that even in self-isolation, people can make the effort to really, again, fulfill those 6 aspects of well-being,
Yes.
can't they?
Yes, you can. And I'm longing to be with friends, but I must say that, and therefore perhaps during this time, reaching out is really even more important, and seeing people, and even if it is just through Zoom or other, technologies, we've got to be proactive, I think, in this time. Be aware, know where your boundaries are, or know what your own conditions, or if you like, even symptoms of maybe stress and anxiety are, and I've certainly got them, and then know what to do about them. So, think about that, and then, put the strategies in place from a personal level, because that's actually all you take to work with you is you, so your personal is going to make an impact at work. And at the moment, we've got this working from home, which is certainly adding to things as well, with perhaps, a unusual work environment for us, impacts on our concentration, how many people are actually in the home at the same time, maybe even your internet connections, all sorts of things have come into it. And you need some flexibility really at the moment. And that goes back to wellness really, because when a person is actually emotionally and well, they have that flexibility. They can cope with a few again those curveballs that come their way. So yeah.
And also even things like homeschooling as well is can be a challenge too.
Oh my word, yes. Yeah, I would certainly say so. Yeah, luckily for myself, I haven't had to deal with it, but I certainly do feel empathy. I've done it. And sympathy for those who need to do that at the moment. And I hope that they're being kind to themselves about that, because it was just in The Age this week actually about those who have really high expectations of themselves at this point are actually the most vulnerable, because they expect that they will do well on the home front, the parenting front, the schooling front, as well as just keep everything going on the work front. Now, how that doesn't add up. But we're not dealing with logic. We're dealing with self-concepts and feelings. And some of those just need a little bit of tweaking and recalibration at this moment. One of the things I would say too with this schooling from home is just relax. It's only a period of time. And it's really hard to actually do that relaxation, I know. As a parent of kids now who have grown up, but having those standards for what you're trying to achieve, they could become a cricket bat that you use on your own head. So just let it go. Let it go. See if it's serving you, or let it go, because this won't last forever. And I don't see that from my own point of view now, with having kids who have gone through education, even if it's a month that kids are doing something different, I don't think we'll see it. I don't think you will see it in kids walking down the street 10 years from now and go, oh, that kid had a month out of education. You're not going to be able to see it. But anyway, that's only a very personal viewpoint. And I just say that for people to relax about it, really. But maybe we should talk more about what mental health is at work, because with my social welfare background and HR and training in mental health, I have just seen so much of a increase in concern in Australia in workplaces about mental health. It is just having such an impact. It's increasingly raised as a issue, if you like, for workers' compensation claims, all sorts of things. It just stress, long-term stress. They're actually looking at it now as it can become what they call a workplace crisis, just ongoing long-term expectations that maybe are maybe a high, and producing such a lot of issue really for employees to actually maintain themselves in the workplace so that they can be productive. Yeah. And what we are seeing still, unfortunately, is that it's having such a negative impact on employees. And just looking here at what the Age article was actually talking about just this week, I think it was Wednesday, something like that. Have a look, but it's they were saying, people are just so tired, getting burnt out at work. And when a person is burnt out, they are just going to be so below par for what they need to do in a competitive environment. So, exhaustion, anxiety, just indifference, like apathy, just can't give a hoot anymore. Depression. And interestingly enough, depression and anxiety have just gone through the roof in the last 10 years in terms of what people are reporting when they do report, But if you want a motivated workforce, you really need to look at the mental health of your employees, motivated and engaged and capable. People can try to be engaged, people can be motivated, but they might just be so darn exhausted, just absolutely tired. The Age was saying here in their article, and it was done by the Black Dog Institute, and 69% in this group were feeling absolutely exhausted, so just tired all the time. So, and with being tired comes incapacity to make really good decisions. You're on your back foot, so you may be a whole lot more emotional. You're not actually. How can you be innovative and positive when you're tired? So it just makes sense to really look at mental health and in the workplace, even aside from work cover claims or anything else like that. It's like you want your team at work to be on point, to be able to perform well, and so that does mean looking at mental health. You can't leave mental health at the door and pick up somebody else's mental health or something else like that. It's personal. It goes with you wherever you go. So educating people about mental health is really a very important thing.
And it must be very costly over the long term you've got here at the bottom.
Oh, hugely. And some of that cost is hidden. And but there are some very, at least 6% of workers' compensation claims are directly connected to mental health, and it's, and it's in the, hundreds of millions of dollars in Australia every year, just connected to mental health, and whilst it's a personal thing, a person's mental health, they can't leave it at the door, like I say. So part of, and they're at work for, 38, 40 hours a week, whatever, generally. So it's a big amount of time. So there are some things you can do about a person's mental health in that period of time.
And of course, they would actually influence negatively everyone around them, wouldn't they?
My word, yes. And like if you're vulnerable, if your feelings are a bit fragile and messy, cynicism comes up, and cynicism is cancerous in an organisation. It's cancerous to, unity, positive thinking, innovation. And guess what? Our future is all based on innovation, really. So you're only going to get that when people are in a good place.
And I think we've probably all experienced, being around someone who's hugely negative and just sort of feeling that oozing into us over time.
Yes. Yeah. And it may not, it's not about fault or anything else like that, but you end up as an employer dealing with it. And there are some things that you can do about it and things that you actually need to know about it. Let's just look at the next slide, Ian. So people talk about depression and anxiety and stress as though it's, I don't know, a lollipop you buy or can put down or something else like that. But in the last decade, we've seen increases here by about a third. And depression now is one of the major primary health disorders for people. And, anxiety right now is double what it used to be. And we're not even talking just about this last month or this year, okay? We're talking about as a pattern across society for some time. So, yeah.
And they're often interlinked too. I've noticed, Suzanne, that people actually who have anxiety also have depression, don't they?
Yeah, quite often. Yes. Yeah. It's that yeah. And it's not just a way of thinking, but it is a real connection. Yeah.
Okay. So costs are substantial.
My wordy, they are substantial, and really need to think about this for any businesses, small or otherwise. But you've got unplanned absences. People start taking time off. They have to. They just can't cope. They just can't come to work. They won't come to work. They will be low on motivation, and they will be low. Perhaps mental illness also impacts on their other elements of wellness, which might be physical fitness, etc. So again, it's that whole connection there. So, people just give up. So you've got staff turnover, or this element here of withdrawal in terms of they're really a bum on a seat at work, but they're not really doing what they need to be doing. So they just withdraw their efforts, their engagement, their connections, their, if you like, their voluntary contribution. Because whilst a person's at work, there's a huge proportion of contribution a person makes that is above and beyond what they actually often have to do to just meet the minimum criteria. So, yeah, that withdrawal is very, it's a bit covert, but it actually, it's a huge expense. So, and then you've got the whole thing of if they're not engaged, you're going to get poor quality of work and poor quantity of work. Again, they're just going to be at the bottom dwellers, just really looking at the lowest and just being compliant. And that's certainly not a workforce that can take you into, growth and innovation and a new future, which is pretty important at the moment.
And again, there'll be a really bad influence on those around them as well, won't they?
Oh, my wordy, yes. Yeah. So, it's a group of people. We're a group of people. We're a community, if you like, at work. And, a lot of people will make the analogy that it's like a, different family that they're with during the day. So, as an employer, then you'd really want to support that family to be as healthy as possible. So some reports that, and this is not about the article that was in The Age, but some other reports, a lot of people aren't really aware of their mental health status, and they will continue without really understanding the depths of the condition that they're actually in at the moment. So in a study of men, they found that 73% who actually scored within the clinical ranges of having a mental health disorder, had no idea that that's actually what they were actually experiencing. So, and then of that group of people as well, most don't seek help because they don't recognise it as what it is. They just think, I don't know what they think it is, but it's only when things get really severe, and it's a big may, that they might go and get some help.
I think what they're experiencing is probably quite normal almost, would you say, Suzanne?
Yes, they do, and they try to minimise it and just sort of normalise it. But if you are not feeling positive and that you can take on the daily challenges in your life, well then you may need to just think about, well, what condition am I in at the moment? And it may not be a healthy mental condition at the moment. Yeah, but it's a good thing to actually just assess that and think about what can you do, and you go back to that wheel of well-being, really. So yeah, but often in the workplace it's not raised. Mental health is not raised sufficiently. people consider it too difficult to raise with their manager, like how do they go about it? And then they're also worried about once they disclose that they have a mental health condition, that they may be marginalised or, victimised. But the reality is, when we're talking about mental health, it's not necessarily a permanent condition. A good deal of us will experience a mental health disorder sometime in our life. And if it's not us, it might be our partner, our son, our father, our sister, etc. So, there are a lot of, there is actually a lot of incidents of mental health in the community. It's just not really spoken about effectively. So, yeah.
And again, very costly, depression especially.
Yeah, this report identified just what it actually costs Australia. And this is not just business, but Australia full stop every year. So, yeah. Mm.
So there's differences between the two genders here, Suzanne.
Yeah, there are. It's very interesting because women will actually, they have a lot more negative view of themselves very quickly. And so self-criticism, etc., comes into play very quickly. And it's connected to that perfectionism too, that they have these very high standards for what they see themselves as being able to achieve, look like, act like, be like, etc. And so it's a bit of it can be very easy for women to have almost the glass half empty concept happening, which doesn't really help them because then they're not really in a good place for looking positively at themselves and at emotions. And quite often when stress hits, the first thing they're going to do then is criticise themselves. They personalise it to themselves instead of perhaps in the reality that, right now, for instance, that there is so much change and uncertainty happening. Maybe it's pretty normal, to have some feelings of stress. So, yeah, they'll self-criticise and think it's them, they should change, it's their fault, that sort of thinking.
And how are men different than here to the women?
Well, men will keep it a lot more hidden, and they'll keep regulating emotions and stress more internally. And women will share quite often more with their girlfriends, etc. Whereas men don't tend to do that as much. And so there's this keeping emotions in check for men and keeping it, not necessarily are they saying I must keep it hidden, but they don't really like to deal with it. It appears that reports show, I don't know, Ian, you can validate that yourself maybe, but often, they appear okay until they're not. And they're a whole lot less likely to seek support, social support, or even validation or exploration with others than what women are. And what they often do, men, is go straight to problem solving and trying to sort it out and get a resolution ASAP, move on, that sort of thing. And maybe that can be good, but sometimes things just need to gestate, be reflected upon, and a range of iterative steps put in place for a resolution to happen. So, yeah.
I think I would certainly agree, Suzanne, that men very seldomly share their problems and issues with other men.
Yep.
And
yep.
And I think very much to their detriment, because I know personally when I've sort of opened up and talked about issues with others, how often the solution just hits you in the face because you're talking about it, you're just exploring, and that they're giving you their suggestions. It just expands your awareness tremendously.
And one of the points even in that, which is a fabulous thing to actually do, talk to other people, is sometimes even the burden of the issue is eliminated or reduced. I wouldn't say necessarily eliminated really, but reduced significantly with just the sharing of and articulating it. maybe, packaging it, and getting the words to actually describe what it is, half the time is even quite a way towards a resolution for some of these things, or even putting it in a package and realising, this is actually the shape of it. Instead of having it as a nebulous thing that's like a ghost biting at you or something, stopping to actually articulate, explore it, and then maybe put it in that bucket that you can't control in and put it away. Who knows what you do with it?
Fantastic.
I think actually too with that, Ian, is sometimes we have illusions of what we can control, and sometimes we have to let some of those go. Yes. So
it's probably just on that point, it then becomes a little bit tricky when you've got couples, where women, handle a situation, the same situation maybe very differently from how the man handles in the couple.
Yep.
And of course that can cause some major issues for the couple, can't it?
Oh my wordy. So yes, yeah. In terms of mental health at work, job satisfaction is a great, I've put it here as like a defense, but it's just such a great platform. When you are satisfied at work, doing what you love to do, if you like, yes, you're paid for it or whatever, but it's such a positive in your life. I mean, we talked before, you're there for 38 hours or whatever else a week. So if it's not a job that's giving you satisfaction, it's then taking from you. So it can either add to you or take from you. So employers, managers, supervisors, etc., really need to think about how they can improve a person's job satisfaction. And here are some strategies that you can do. In some studies, they've just found that if you are involved in decision making as an employer, you feel validated. You've got your knowledge about your job, how you do it, why you do it, who you're doing it with, all those sorts of things. So if you can be involved in decision making about anything that impacts on your job, this is going to be a positive for you. Many times, employers, bosses, etc., are low on giving feedback. They think maybe, well, I pay them, I smile at them every now and then, surely they're happy. Really people always benefit. I don't think you can have too much positive feedback, really. It's got to be meaningful feedback. It's got to be about the job. It's not about what colour scarf you're wearing or something else like that, especially for blokes. They're not interested in that. You're wearing a good suit. Who cares? They'll want to know that they're actually competent and that they're doing a good job. And I think that's a very good thing to stick to, full stop. It's about the job. So really know your employees and give them meaningful feedback whenever you can.
So back to number one, just for a sec, sorry, Suzanne. So back to number one, would you say that also helps them because they sort of feel like they're in control in some way too?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yeah. Yes. Because anything that impacts on their job, how they do it, what they're doing, where, when, all those sorts of things are things that, you should consult with your employees about. Mm-hmm. They're the ones in the seat. So being told is actually, it's patronising, it's dismissive. I would find that offensive. So I can't go home at the end of the day and feel, hey, great about my job when I've been told what to do without consultation. You may need to give instructions to someone, but if you're doing it in a two-way, a process, methodology of, talking about the outcome that's got to be achieved and then having two-way discussion and then making a decision about that, it's not necessarily even that it's the person, the employee's decision in the end, it's that they're being consulted. That's a really big element there. Because sometimes you may have to make an unpopular choice. That's what you pay for sometimes, so yeah. Sure. Yeah, so other things that you can really do to help is plan the activities and work hours. Talk to the employee about those key activities they do and the hours that are needed for it. And I suppose going back almost to point one, putting that into your decision making as a supervisor. So when you're also planning an employee's work tasks or the tasks for the whole team, you really should be also considering just what their personal and family needs are, because we're all very different. I mentioned before where I am in my stage of life. Well, 20 years ago, the picture would have been quite different. So, and that makes quite an impact then on how you can operate and what you want to do, etc. So, consult and know. You really should know your employees. And when employees give extra effort, make sure that you're actually giving extra recognition for that. The reality is not everybody gives at the same rate. And if you want to have extra input from staff, you need to actually make sure you recognise any of the efforts they put into place.
And would that then encourage even more extra effort in the future?
Absolutely. That's what positive feedback, recognition always does, you know. So imagine if it was negative feedback and negative recognition. Well, that's just going to make a person withdraw. If you want them to come out and play well, these are the things you need to do. So,
fantastic.
Yeah. If people are a bit vulnerable, you know, emotionally messy, and maybe some of the symptoms of mental health aren't all that positive, what you can do for that employees at that time is not overwhelm them. Just put some simple chunks or projects work in their work plan. So instead of, you know, we're going to climb the Mount Everest, etc., that we're just talking about, well, we're going to get to this one, and then give them feedback at the end of that so that they know they've done right and they're getting some positive feedback about what they've done right. And maybe they haven't operated all that well at that point. So maybe before you go much further and your platform is eroded from, you know, some mistakes, that you're actually looking at that point of some resolutions to that before you move on further. So just putting things into smaller chunks that you can actually then say to the person, you know, well done, we've done that, you know, now we can move on. So it's a bit, you've still got to get the outcome, but it's just taking it in smaller chunks.
And presumably they'll feel really good because they've achieved something, haven't they?
Yes. We all want to go home at the end of the day and think, hey, we've done something. You know, we've done something well. You know, we've dealt with this issue or that project or this bit of work, and it went well. You know, so yeah. So that's actually a really nice sort of point there, Ian, too, in terms of maybe like at the end of the day, just touching base. One of the very good bosses I've had in the past, every day they went around and spoke to every single person. They made sure every day and just got to know them, but then, you know, talked about work or whatever else. Doesn't always have to be about work, quite frankly, but just making sure that you touch base with that person. At the moment, another organisation I'm working with, they do a Zoom call at 5 o'clock where they just get together, it's meant to be 15 minutes, not longer. And it just sometimes is, but, you know, they just have this discussion. What went well? What's on the go for tomorrow? You know, what do they have to fix? Anything emerge? All those sorts of things. And they can close out, and everybody feels, you know, great. It's almost sets you up as a really well for the next day, because it's like clearing your desk of things.
That's also point number 4 here in terms of increased communications, isn't it?
Yes, very much, yeah. And the other point up here, as you'll see, is just making sure you give very clear direction. So nothing nebulous. If someone's not in a good frame, don't give them nebulous things to do, or maybe decision making, etc. Just very clear. Do this, and for now, you know, and yeah.
Excellent.
So you can build job satisfaction, but there's also some things you can do in terms of take away some things that erode job satisfaction. And just, I suppose these are the annoyances in life or in the work life, you know. So maybe get rid of all the time pressures. Just leave that person to be able to determine their own time. Get rid of excess paperwork and processes, etc. Maybe you can't do that all the time. Maybe it's just for a period of time that you can just do that. Let them deal with that at the end of the month or something else like that. I would encourage for people to be able to have times where they just turn their phone off or are relieved of phone interruptions. If you can't think very clearly because maybe your mental health isn't the best that day, so you're a bit fragile, the phone interruptions can just be a shoot across your bow and stop you from actually going to where you need to go. And maybe, getting rid of some of that phone interruptions can help that person just focus and be in control of what they're doing. And speaking of that, you really probably need to think about, well, how much work am I expecting from that person right now? And is that fair? Can I do something about that?
It's a major productivity buster, isn't it? Phone calls.
Yes, my word.
Yeah, because it takes you so much time then to refocus at the end of the call. It just really disrupts the workflow, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah. And I know smart people, I don't do it quite often as much as I should, but actually turn off their phones and just get some work done. Yeah. So also what you would really need to think about for that person who may be, experiencing some of the vulnerabilities of mental health issues at the time is make sure that the work you're giving them doesn't intrude into their family or social life. Now, at the moment, that's a really hard call because, people working from home, etc. But really think about the load of work and when people are doing work and what you expect. Do you expect them to get back on a WhatsApp call or something else like that overnight? Just really rein that in. Yeah. Another thing you can do is get rid of difficult clients. I would suggest get rid of difficult clients full stop. But, sometimes, maybe move that difficult client onto someone else who's a bit more resilient at that point in time, and give the vulnerable person a bit of a client holiday for the moment from those types of clients. And maybe what you could even do is remove them from working outward with clients and doing some back end work with clients. So just to give them some relief there.
It's amazing. I was going to say, Suzanne, amazing how the 80-20 rule often comes into play here. Where 20% of your clients give you 80% of your headaches.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, really, as business owners, I think so often you really got to think about your client base and are they really worth it? And are they worth the disruption? And we've also talked about, the costs, to the resilience of your work team. Why are we dealing with this person? And actually, while you're dealing with that person, you can't go and deal with another person. So it's an opportunity lost as well. So you've got to think about your resource base there. But yeah, a lot of the time, people will be worried about money. And so if you possibly can, you need to really work with your employee and solidify their understanding of their job and of the prospects into the future, and try and relieve this whole issue about earning enough money. Before, we also mentioned about like women and unreal community expectations. Well, the men have those too, as we know. So maybe having some chats about what are really unrealistic expectations, and this again maybe goes to some awareness training, about mental health or anything else like that. So people have an idea of what actually is happening, what is real in the world.
And what sort of reasonable expectations to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, facts and figures actually speak quite a lot about that. But you can actually ask your staff, and don't leave it to just them. But a good employer, a good boss would actually ask people to plan their work days, plan their breaks. Then you actually know when they are too. Even start planning their holidays so that people have something to look forward to, but also that So it's actually, and a plan is just a plan. It's not necessarily, written in blood and an absolute firm commitment, but it's just understanding this is where we're going to go. This is what we hope to do today.
It's not casting concrete then, Suzanne.
No, not that concrete. No. Yeah, we need far more flexibility than concrete provides, I'm afraid. So, yeah, make sure your staff are taking lunch breaks. It's pretty hard to do while people are working from home, etc. But, encourage people to take work breaks, encourage them to, make a phone call or do something different in their lunch break. I'm a terror with this one, cleaning up and tidying up. And I don't do enough. And it actually can really impact on people's capacity to just really think clearly, because it's almost like being bombarded by too much stimulus when you've got too much rubbish around. So I have sorted out my desk recently because it was just one project after another. And you sort of know where things are, but not quite. So it doesn't help you have a good handle on things. So encourage people to just clean up and tidy up at the end of every day. Give them that 5 minutes to do that. Ask people to take a walk, to actually go and have time away from the workplace. And these are things that can encourage good mental health, whether they're at work or if they're working from home. Right now, it's pretty important that these things are put into place. I don't know. I'm thinking about holidays, and I don't know when or where, but I certainly, well, I do know where. I've got a few things that I'm thinking, yes, this will be nice. I just don't know when. So, but it's okay to dream.
It's amazing, though, how much a walk outside actually really clears the mind, doesn't it? Yes,
absolutely. And it's hard to sort of articulate, but how much return on investment you get for the time it takes you. I was walking the other day and I thought, surely it's like 15 minutes. I'm going to be late for a meeting I had with someone. And I found it, no, it's only 5 minutes. It feels like 15 because it's so rejuvenating. Really.
And often if you're stuck on a problem, having a quick walk, it's amazing how an idea might just come to you while you're having the walk.
Yes, absolutely. So there are a few more things that you can do for your staff. Encourage them to set a time-out alarm. So for 15 minutes, people are allowed to have under the law, and it's a good practice. And I'm sure employers are not would not want their employees to take, a coffee break. It's so easy to just sit, and I've been doing that myself. Just sit, work. Have the coffee break. It really helps. And see if people can understand and know how to do a mini meditation. And Ian, this would be your field. Have a laugh or have a bit of some sort of comedy thing, and maybe at the moment send a funny email around to people or whatever, and a story or something else like that.
And Dan, do you prefer cat videos or do you prefer dog videos?
Yeah. Actually, the cat ones are pretty funny, I think. So, yes, yeah. But anyway, yeah. Make sure you have some catch-up time with that person. And again, that's speaking about those communications beforehand. And have a list of strategies ready. If you're the team leader or whatever, and people are talking about, blah, 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 they're not feeling very well, feeling a bit vulnerable, ask them, how are they sleeping, or, what are they eating, or, have a bit of perhaps a checklist and some strategies in place for that employee.
I might just want to just again remind our viewers that in our workshop on reducing anxiety and dealing with uncertainty, we actually provide them with a very powerful recording for stress management and relaxation. So they can always go back to that and use that if they need to in this situation. Yeah,
absolutely. Yes, as long as they don't use that meditation tape while they're driving heavy machinery, Ian.
Exactly. But not a good idea.
Yeah. So when you're not in a good headspace, let's call it that, just really be aware of some of the irrational beliefs. They're actually irrational, feelings much more, and then you allow them to become beliefs, and then they own you almost, and then they're not real. So be careful about exaggerating how bad things are. And actually, I'm sorry about, the news and things like that all the time, because, they unfortunately sensationalize it all, and you feel very vulnerable as a single person in the middle of this whole mad system and economy, and wondering where on earth it's going, and they don't report so much good news. And I think, so be careful of that, the exaggerations that's out there. Be careful of frustration and allowing yourself to perhaps exhibit frustration. You might feel it, maybe take some deep breaths before you actually act on it. But, understand when people are vulnerable, and we are all on a bit more now under these circumstances, that frustration's likely to seep in and come out a bit quicker. So for yourself, give yourself a bit of license, give yourself a deep breath, as I said before, and just maybe take a deep breath before you act on anything, but also understand that that's what you might be seeing in other people as well. I mentioned before a little bit about flexibility, maybe about the education of kids and all the rest of that, but be really careful at the moment about having very, I suppose, high and demands or inflexible demands about, I don't know, how people should speak to you, when they should speak to you, or whatever else like that. Just understand at the moment, flexibility is just really going to be your friend and other people's friends as well. And be aware maybe sometimes of your own feelings, and maybe feeling like things are happening to you, or, feeling a bit more, hard done by, or anything else like that. It may well be true, but it doesn't actually serve you to stay thinking and absorbed by those sorts of feelings. Those feelings don't help you move forward, move into something more positive. So some of the things that you can encourage your employees, or yourself if you need to do, is to actually look at some self-awareness strategies. And Ian, what do you think a self-awareness strategy could be, a successful one that you would have maybe with some of your clients?
Well, one of the things that, I often talk to my clients about actually is, at the end of the day, just to do a bit of a review,
Yep.
Of what actually happened that day. Yep. What was great, what was maybe not so great. Think about, well, how could they possibly do better tomorrow?
Yep.
If a similar sort of scenario occurs, and then maybe even do a bit of a mental rehearsal, just to help them sort of get into the right frame of mind. So when it occurs again, I'll do something a little bit different, and just sort of see how that hopefully improves things.
Yep. I also think perhaps, like keeping a journal is a good thing. Doing a bit of some sort of form of spirituality, sort of, looking inwards, reflection, that sort of thing. It doesn't have to, come from God above or anything else like that. It's about you internally, spending some time doing that.
Actually, meditation will also be very good here as well, Suzanne.
Yeah. Interesting. I said, give yourself some time. I think we're very low on giving ourselves time, actually.
Yep.
Yeah. Make sure you've got some good relationships and leisure activities. So have a support network. Make time for your partner if you've got a partner, or your family. Have a little bit of a think about, what are the things that you enjoy in your leisure time? Are you actually accessing some of those? You could be robbing yourself of some really lovely pleasures. It could be, artistic things. It could be, music. It could be a whole range of things. It could be bushwalking. So, where do you find pleasure? And, if you're with someone who's, experiencing mental health issues at the moment, ask them that, and ask them to, how can they get back to some of those activities? And even if they don't feel brilliant while they're doing it, are they going to feel good that they were there doing it again? And
it's so important to do at least one pleasurable thing each day, isn't it, Suzanne?
Yeah, it is. It is. One thing for you, there's a lot that you have to do. So it's really great if you can actually do something that's the thing that lights your fires, whatever that is.
And that sort of also moves into promoting self-care, doesn't it?
Yes. So, review those elements of well-being. Where are you on all of those elements? And, make sure that you think about, we mentioned like having holidays. I've got a friend who takes a week off every quarter. That's her strategy for just promoting self-care, goes away and looks after herself. Think about how you're spending your weekends. Or we mentioned sleeping earlier on, and your food, your exercise. So just really think, what can you do in each of those elements to improve things? Maybe put down the Tim Tam biscuit. Maybe just walk away.
And that actually feeds into time management too, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. So maybe think about where you're ineffectively wasting time, which is often maybe, I don't know, TV, FaceTime, all those sorts of things can absorb you. And some of those things can be good, but it's about having some control and awareness around what you're actually doing with it. So,
what do you mean here by personal philosophy, Suzanne?
Well, I think really just think about your own goals, professionally, personally. How do you actually want to live? And it really encompasses all these elements that we're looking at on the screen here at the moment. So allocate some time to actually think about these things and see if you're actually living within your own personal philosophy. My philosophy and what I want to have in my life is different to yours. How am I actually doing that? Is it actually working for me? And I actually really like that phrase. Is something working for you or not? And if it's not, what can you do about it? So, yeah. Moving on, there's some great resources around and a lot on websites, etc., with Beyond Blue or the Black Dog Institute. Both of those are very reputable organisations with some really good resources. There's written, there's video, there's all sorts of things. But also, too, if you are struggling and you want some help, you really should look at what is available. And I've just put there the Melbourne NLP and Hypnosis Centre there, Ian, because what would you do for someone who's needing some help with mental health?
Well, we have a whole range of programs, Suzanne, that actually help with things like depression, stress, anxiety, and also even we find that many of our clients, their coping mechanisms for these types of issues, they often resort to things like alcohol or overeating or smoking and so on. And so very often, if they're having those sorts of challenges, like, quit smoking or giving up the drink, often the deeper issues are things like stress, anxiety, and depression.
Yes.
And we find it's amazing how often we find, Suzanne, that, if someone comes to see us for something like gambling, for example, if we sort of look at the stress and anxiety first, if that's appropriate, that often the gambling will just disappear all by itself.
Fabulous.
And the great thing also is with the current environment we're actually in, we now do everything online. So it actually becomes really, really convenient for people.
Yes.
And also, because they're having their sessions actually at home, where they're very comfortable, they're very familiar environment for them, often it actually leads to better results for them as well.
That's very interesting. I know as a HR practitioner, I need to know what are the local services around because I may need to refer an employee onto some local service. So it's really worthwhile looking at not only resources you can give people to pursue on their own time, etc., but also just what is available. And the local resources will vary, of course. What you're pointing out, though, is very valid in terms of now with communications happening as they are. You can reach a wide audience. So
it's almost global now, Suzanne.
Yes, it is. My word. So as an employer, what you really need to think about, or a team leader, is what is happening in your employee's life. Have they got some life issues? Have they got health issues? Then are there organisational pressures actually happening as well? And if you've got all those three factors actually happening, cooking up, if you like, all at the same time, just be aware that you're heading towards a bit of a danger zone with that employee. So they might do with some support for health issues or life issues and maybe look at, well, what can you do within your own scope, realm, to be able to reduce some of the organisational pressures. It's not your mandate to deal with an employee's personal issues, family issues, etc., but you might be able to just provide some support and some advice.
And presumably once, if they can reduce the pressures in the organisation, that will actually have some great flow-on effects to the health and life issues, won't it, Suzanne?
Absolutely, and it's all connected. So yes. So
we have a bonus here for us, Suzanne. Tell us all about this. I'm excited about it.
I have got a free assessment for any organisation to access. All they've got to do is contact me and we will go through a 10-point free assessment of the human resource systems that they have running in their business at the moment, and I will give them advice on where they might actually improve. If they improve their HR systems, it may well improve the conditions. That's what we are hoping to do for all of their employees. So that has an implication. I'm also really very interested to speak to anybody if they've got some questions about mental health in the workplace, they want training in this, etc. So, yeah.
Fantastic. It's very generous of you, Suzanne. So just maybe give us another quick summary then of what we've talked about today.
Yeah, so we have looked and we have unpacked about what is wellness. We talked about the different elements of that. We talked about the benefits of wellness for employees as well as just as individuals. We looked at, well, what is a balanced life and the impacts of mental wellness at work, and quite a range of support strategies and resources. So we've unpacked quite a bit in the time that we've been going, Ian.
We certainly have. So again, we'd like to thank everyone again for watching our workshop today. Hope you got a lot of value from that. There's a lot of content, a lot of really valuable tips and resources. Again, if you have any questions, just place them beneath this video and we'll answer them as soon as we possibly can. Now, feel free to also like our video and share that with anyone that you might find it useful. To view our other workshops in our personal and professional wellness series, simply visit the YouTube channels of either Melbourne NLP Hypnosis or Performance Advantage HR. You've got our contact details actually over here. You want to contact either Suzanne and myself. So till next time, thanks again from Suzanne and Dr. Ian Kaminsky. Thank you.
Thank you.